Hello, hello. Congratulations. Now that you are finally engaged, it's the time to talk about venue selection. This is one of the most exciting parts in planning your wedding, and today I'm going to walk you through the very important steps and questions to ask when selecting the perfect venue. My name is Vanessa Smith, and I have been a wedding planner in the Seattle area for about 23 years. I love planning events and can't wait to help you today with how to choose the perfect venue. Let's get started. As you probably already realized in a quick Google search of wedding venues in your area, there's probably a lot of them, and it can be pretty overwhelming. What my goal is today is to give you a list of questions to take to each venue so that when you get home and you're trying to make that decision of which space is right for your wedding, you're able to compare some version of apples and apples. Each venue is going to be very different, and some will immediately connect with you while others won't. That'll help in the quick elimination process. But when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, it's important to have a pros and cons list of each venue. I highly recommend writing down some of these questions and taking them on your venue walkthroughs so you don't forget what to ask, because some of these are rather important. Let's get started. The first question I really encourage you to push on is capacity. You probably already have a really good idea of how many guests will be attending your wedding. You need to make sure that that aligns with the venue you choose. Ask the difference between reception style capacity and seated capacity. There's a very big difference. Reception style means cocktail hour, mingling capacity, while seated means having people at tables for dinner. You need to make sure that those numbers align with whatever your guest count or approximate guest count will be. It's also important to check with the venue to make sure that they allow both ceremonies and receptions. I know in the Seattle area I've encountered a few venues that don't allow ceremonies, and my clients never thought to even ask that during the walkthrough. So it's definitely an important question to ask. The number one challenge that we run into in wedding planning is not having enough hours of venue access. It's very important to fully understand how many hours are included in your venue rental package and what the additional cost is if you need to add additional hours. The average wedding is 5 to 6 hours in length, and that's from guest arrival time to guest departure time. In addition to that, you're going to need substantially more hours for setup and cleanup. We always recommend having 3 hours for setup and 1 hour for cleanup, and that's if you're using professional vendors. So add those additional 4 hours to a 5 to 6 hour package, and you can see that you need quite a bit of hours. The best venue packages are usually 10 to 12 hours, and those are very doable. End times are another area that we run into. A lot of venues are located in residential areas, which means they're going to be regulated by NORS ordinances. You need to take these seriously. Your venue will probably have a no amplified music or no amplified sound ordinance time that they're following, and a lot of times this can be 10 p.m. At some venues, this doesn't mean that the party has to end, and so they'll mark it that the events can go to 11 or 12, but you can't have music. And for most people, that's a no-go. So take that into consideration and make sure you understand what time your party has to end at that venue. Parking is another thing to consider, especially if you're planning a city wedding. My recommendation to you is to take your approximate guest count and divide it by 3. On average, we need 1 parking spot for every 3 guests attending the wedding, plus an additional 5 to 10 for vendors. So if you're having, let's say 150 guests, I'd be looking for 50, more like 60 parking spots to know that I was well covered for my event. I also recommend asking about restrooms, the availability of them, the location of them, and how many. Take that into consideration. On average, we recommend about 1 restroom stall per 50 guests, give or take a little, but definitely something to keep in mind. Having accessibility for all of your guests is extremely important. If you have guests in wheelchairs or with handicap needs, you want to make sure that they're going to be able to access the areas that you're hosting your event. So you'll want to ask them about their accessibility plans and if all of your guests will be able to reach each component of the event venue. Rain plans, especially coming from a Seattleite here, are extremely important. You need to know what the plan B is. You need to know what your venue offers if the weather doesn't hold up. Now, don't stress over this. I watch many couples spend thousands and thousands of dollars preparing for the perfect rain plan, which they end up not needing. I recommend just knowing your rain plan, understanding what the rain plan options are, and then just jotting it down with your planner. It'll help you feel at ease on your wedding day if the weather does go awry. Also, tent rentals can be extremely expensive. So if you are going to have to do a rental on a tent or a deposit on a tent in order to have a rain backup plan, you should make sure you're aware of that and have it in your budget. I also recommend taking a look at the getting ready areas. For some couples, this is a lot more important than others. Ask them if they have a bridal dressing room or a groom's hangout room or any sort of area for the wedding party to gather prior, and then take a quick look at the space. Sometimes these can be very tiny spaces, while other times they can be absolutely stunning and a place you definitely want to get photos done in. Understanding the lighting of your venue is also extremely important. Knowing whether the options of lighting are dimmable or just on-off is an important thing to consider. And then, are the areas of the venue that are your favorite lit well enough to use at any time during your event? One of the areas that I definitely recommend paying exceptionally big attention to, what are the options for dimming the lights over the dance floor? There's nothing that can ruin a dance party more than having it super bright. So take a look at that for sure. If you plan to not use the venue's caterer or the venue doesn't offer catering, make sure you understand the catering options that are allowed at your venue. And same on that point, the bartending options as well. Are you allowed to bring in your own alcohol? Do you have to do it through the venue? Does the venue have a list of venue caterers that they can, or bartenders that you can use at the venue? What are your options there, and how do you want to handle that? Coming back to you with a few other really important questions to ask, make sure you understand the options on rehearsals. Are they an option? A lot of venues will rent the space to separate couples for both Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you're a Saturday bride and there's a Friday rental, when do you get to do your rehearsals? A lot of times the answer is Thursday or Saturday morning, which honestly neither one is a huge deal, but definitely something you should know and take into consideration in your pros and cons list if it's important to you. Deliveries of any other vendors, materials, or rentals, or chairs, or whatever it is you need to rent for your event, knowing the access or delivery times that are allowed for your venue is also really important. There can be substantial additional costs from vendors, especially rental companies, if they have to deliver within a really small window or do a late night pickup after your event. Understand these delivery times and even call one of the special event rental companies and ask them for an approximation of cost for those delivery windows. You may be surprised. I also recommend asking if your venue has an open flame policy. A lot of venues only allow battery operated candles. This may not be a big deal to you, but for others, this may be a huge deal. A lot of venues will have an enclosed glass policy, which means you can have candles in glass, but that means you can't have taper candles that aren't in those really cool chimney things. So you just want to understand what the options are and what decor you are allowed to utilize in the space and what you're not. As much as we never want to think about our wedding being canceled, it is important to understand the cancellation policies of your venue. Sometimes we hit a roadblock and we need to shift plans. Understanding what happens to your deposit and what happens to your date, and if dates are transferable or the deposit could be sold to another client, are all important things to know. Just ask the question. It's better to have the information than not. I'm a huge fan of open-ended questions. I love to ask people open-ended questions and then listen. You can learn so much by doing so. So one of my other favorite questions when I go on a venue tour with a client is, tell me about the curveballs of the space. What should I know? And then I just stop and I wait to see what they have to say. These professionals that are showing you these venues have been doing this most likely for a really long time, and they're going to give you such valuable information that will really help you create a beautiful event there. So just listen and take notes. You should also fully understand with what's included in the venue. A lot of venues do include tables and chairs, but do they include the setup of those tables and chairs? Who's supposed to do the setup? Is trash removal included? Just kind of ask what's included with the rental price and what's not included that may incur additional charges. This is a quick list of questions to ask, and a lot of times if you're listening well, each answer that the venue representative gives will lead you to more questions, and ask them. The most important thing to do is to fully understand the venue that you're booking prior to booking it. Again, I'm so excited that you're at this spot in the journey, and choosing a wedding venue is the most exciting part. Like and subscribe because we have lots more fun information to share.